Attorney Kaufman, good afternoon. How are you today?
Good afternoon.
How is our former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte?
As always, he's in good spirits. Very happy to see his legal team.
Thank you, Attorney. Attorney, after submitting the renewed request for the interim release of the former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, what is the expected timeline for the pretrial chamber to issue its decision?
Well, it's customary that the chambers rule on such requests as quickly as possible. So we anticipate within a week or two, we should have a decision.
Based on ICC practice, Attorney, are there specific procedural rules and guides how quickly such requests should be resolved?
Well, they should be resolved. The statutory framework requires that requests for interim release are resolved as soon as possible.
Attorney, regarding your motion to defer adjudication of the jurisdictional challenge, it is correct that the pretrial chamber must first decide on the interim release request before the turning to jurisdiction. Is that what we are aiming for here?
Well, I don't think the sequencing is quite correct there. The chamber can decide on jurisdiction at any stage, even up until the end of the confirmation of charges hearing. We believe that it should be decided earlier, but as you know, we made the request a long time ago, and we're still awaiting a decision on that particular matter. Interim release, however, is a different matter entirely, and the judges normally decide on that type of thing as soon as possible.
So, Attorney, it is possible, just to make it clearer, that on jurisdiction, it is possible that the decision on jurisdiction could only come after the confirmation of charges hearing.
At the end of the confirmation of charges hearing, it's possible. However, I believe that the decision on the jurisdictional challenge will be earlier. Interim release, I believe that should be within a few weeks.
Does that affect the strategy of the defense?
Not really. We hope that the former president will be released. We believe he should be released, and we hope that it will happen.
Attorney, if the court ultimately decides not to proceed to trial, what happens to the unresolved motions, such as those jurisdictional challenge or interim release? Will they simply be moot or academic?
They will be moot and academic, yes, exactly. I mean, if the case doesn't go to trial, it's because there isn't enough evidence to satisfy the substantial grounds to satisfy the court that the former president committed crimes. So there's no case to answer, as it were.
Attorney Kaufman, on a different matter, media reports claim you withdrew the request to disqualify Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan before the appeals chamber. Can you clarify whether this is accurate?
No, it's totally false. That's based on an incorrect reading that some reporter, I forget which journal it was, had of something that was published on the website. And like you, Alvin, who didn't unfortunately read the fine details, what was published on the ICC website was an earlier motion that we filed in April, where the prosecutor had notified his supposed lack of conflict of interest. We relied on what's called the presumption of prosecutorial regularity. Didn't feel that there was a need to basically contradict what the former prosecutor had said. I say the former prosecutor, the current prosecutor, but he's currently on self-imposed leave. And then, at the end of June, we were suddenly disclosed the motion that he'd filed on behalf of the victims that he had represented. He'd represented more than 100 victims. The number, the nature of the representation were not known to us in advance. That's why we have reintroduced the request for the disqualification of the prosecutor.
Attorney, if the appeals chamber grants your request and Prosecutor Khan is disqualified, what would be the immediate and long-term significance of these developments?
Well, immediate and long-term significance won't be too great because effectively, as I've told you just now, he's on self-imposed leave because of the allegations made against him. However, there is an additional aspect to the request to disqualify Karim Khan. We argue that the very fact of his involvement as a victim's representative and subsequently becoming the prosecutor means that the investigation itself against the former president has been contaminated.
Okay. Attorney, does that also mean that there is a requirement to change prosecutorial leadership or potentially delay the proceedings?
No, because at the current moment in time, the person who's handling the prosecution, technically speaking, is Deputy Prosecutor Niang, and there's an American prosecutor who's handling the case on a daily basis.
Attorney Kaufman, media outlets have been criticized for inaccurate or negligent reporting on these proceedings, particularly on sensitive matters. What is your response to this?
Well, I think it's a justified criticism. people jump to conclusions on the basis of what they see on the website. They don't bother reading the fine print, and they see the glaring headlines, think it's newsworthy, and immediately publish without applying the brain too much.
Do you believe that such reporting could prejudice public opinion or even affect the fairness of the proceedings?
Sometimes it's liable to do so, indeed, yeah.
Attorney, just to piggyback on that, given that during the administration of former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, certain media reports were arguably published with negligence in fact-checking or appeared to have been influenced by external directives, can such circumstances be invoked to challenge the credibility and evidentiary weight of media-based accounts presented before the International Criminal Court?
Well, it's a rather long question, Alvin, but I'll do my best to answer. It's quite well known that at the International Criminal Court, cases start off on the basis of media reports. And in fact, one of the criticisms leveled at the prosecution in the past has been a heavy reliance on open source materials. In the present case, there has been obviously a large amount of media involvement. There's also been, however, a large amount of civil society organizations involved, victims' representations. The prosecution here have gathered substantial evidence, it must be said. So the case against the former president isn't totally relying on media material. I can put it that way.
Attorney, in your recent submission on the organization of the confirmation of charges hearing, you indicated that you will have 30 minutes for your opening statement, 3 to 4 hours to address legal issues, and then 30 minutes for your closing. Could you share how you are preparing for this, especially in terms of structuring legal arguments and emphasizing key defenses?
Well, I'm sorry I'm not going to litigate the case here in a media interview. However, the prosecution and the victims today have published their anticipated schedule for the confirmation of charges hearing, and they're basically the same. They're both asking for 30 minutes opening and closing, 3 hours of submissions in the middle.
Do you know, Attorney Kaufman, if the confirmation of charges hearing will be streamed online for public and observers in the Philippines or globally?
100% yes. It will be available online, probably with a 30 minutes delay, because things can be said that shouldn't be said during a hearing in open session. The prosecution have announced that there will be a few instances where they'll need to go into private session, closed session, in order to protect victims or witnesses' interests. We might need the same as well, but the general rule is you try to minimize as much as possible private or closed sessions so that the public can be exposed to the hearing.
Attorney Kaufman, just to put things in proper perspective and also for the public to have a proper thought on the matter, could you clarify the distinction between the ICC's pre-trial phase and the trial phase?
So pre-trial phase is when you're building up to this big hearing, which is going to take place in September, according to the current schedule, the confirmation of charges hearing. This is when the prosecution get the first opportunity to present their case, and the defense get their first opportunity to challenge the prosecution evidence. Essentially, the prosecution have to convince the judges that there are substantial grounds to believe that the suspect, in this case the former president, committed the crimes which the prosecution alleges he committed. This is a higher standard, a higher evidentiary standard than the reasonable suspicion standard, which is sufficient to get someone arrested. But it's a lower standard than the standard which has to be proved at trial, which is beyond reasonable doubt. So it's a kind of somewhere in between standard. And the prosecution have to satisfy the judges that there are substantial grounds to believe that the former president committed the crimes that he's committed of. Once they pass that hurdle, if they pass that hurdle, then you get to the trial phase. And that's when witnesses are brought to testify and their evidence is tested by way of cross-examination.
But there has been already news circulating that almost 300 witnesses have presented themselves to be witnesses for the case of the former president before the ICC. Does this mean that this is only going to be presented if we proceed to trial phase?
Well, 300 witnesses is double the amount that I'm aware of, so I don't know where these extra 150 have come from. But anyway, be that as it may, the prosecution will announce the witnesses that it intends to rely on. It's not for the defense to decide which witnesses to bring. It's the prosecution who brought this case against the former president. It's the prosecution who have to prove this case against the former president, and they have to do it beyond reasonable doubt, assuming they satisfy the substantial grounds to believe.
Just one
Test.
more follow-up on that particular question, attorney. What kind of decision does the pretrial chamber issue at the end of this stage then?
Whether or not certain charges are confirmed and suitable to go forward to trial.
Yes, Banat Bay from
Sorry. Attorney Kaufman, given that Arturo Las Cañas, one of the key witnesses against former President Duterte, now faces an arrest warrant in the Philippines for civil libel, how this affect his credibility before the ICC and the strength of the case against PRRD?
I'm not allowed to comment on evidence. You have to excuse me on that. I can't comment on whether or not Las Cañas is a witness or isn't a witness, and I can't comment on whatever aspect of his evidence might be relevant or not relevant to the proceedings. You have to understand that every interview that I give is being scrutinized by the judges, by the prosecution, by everybody.
Correct.
So I'm being cautious.
Okay. What can we expect for your defense team, led by yourself, of course, during the confirmation of charges hearing?
A very strong rebuttal of prosecution evidence. More than that, I'm not going to give you in this interview.
Okay. Attorney, this is just something that has already transpired. The presence of the former President Duterte's children in The Hague is a significant development for all of the spectators. How does this demonstrate the court that he poses no risk of flight or interference? Or is it connected in that sense?
I'm not sure how it's connected. I think it's wonderful that they're able to visit their father. I think it would be even more wonderful and amazing if they were able to visit their father when he was released with guarantees to the country he's seeking to be released to.
Attorney, finally, what message would you like to send to the millions of Filipinos who continue to closely monitor these proceedings and support former President Duterte?
First of all, I would ask all the Filipinos who support the former president to put their faith in the judicial process. Second of all, keep praying for his speedy release with guarantees to the country he requests and for his speedy return to the Philippines. And I have a request from the Philippines administration and government. I'm still waiting to be invited. I want to speak to you people. I want to negotiate the former president's return now to the Philippines.
Thank you, Attorney.
Thank you.
Do you believe Duterte was right to withdraw the Philippines from the ICC?
Once again, I'm not going to comment on controversial issues. You're the guy who asked the difficult questions.
Sorry.
You have to understand, everything I say is being scrutinized. It's not really a question which I need to answer. The simple fact of the matter is he's here now and we have to deal with that.
Last one, Attorney.
Go ahead.
Sir, Attorney Kaufman, how confident are we that the ICC will grant our request for former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte's interim release before the confirmation of charges hearing? Is there a high chance that this will be granted?
Personally speaking, I'm always confident. I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for the judges. We have a judicial process. We've done the best we can. We've argued everything possible. We just hope that the judges will agree.
Thank you, Attorney Kaufman.
Last question, not about this case, okay? Since you have been with the PRRD for a long time, what do you think is the most misunderstood part of PRRD's leadership?
The speeches which have been selectively chosen. People can choose speeches which suit their purposes, but the former president made plenty of speeches which don't necessarily support a policy of extrajudicial killing. They don't.
Thank you, Attorney
He
Kaufman.
was a person who wasn't shy of using, can we put it, colourful language. But he's probably one of the most popular politicians in the Philippines has ever had. And there's a reason for that.
That's
Do you
correct.
think that the media is intentionally doing fake news so that PRRD would be crucified?
I think we'll save those comments for court. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
you,
Attorney
Attorney.
Kaufman.